This is going to be our official Muscle Up seminar, sponsored by Streetlifting University. Let's go.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's talk through it. So I would say the Muscle Up is definitely one of probably the most complicated lift that we have in streetlifting, and the reason behind that is like, even though I think the name itself is a misnomer, because the fact that it's called Muscle Up, but you can't actually muscle your way through it, is just like, it's contradicting in itself, right?
It is.
There's so much technique that's involved with the Muscle Up, and a lot of people will say that it's like, oh yeah, you know, if you have a really strong pull-up, you're gonna have great muscle ups, but there is very little correlation between the actual two, right? It's more so that it's the speed of your pull that's going to determine the success of your muscle up, right? If you have a really slow pull, it's gonna be a lot harder to be able to get very solid muscle up. So what we kind of want to do is just work through and talk through some of the techniques and the little tips and tricks that we use to be successful with our muscle ups. We got Theo here too, who is like the muscle up specialist master over here with like 30 kg or something stupid on muscle ups.
Something like that.
Something like that, you know? And so, yeah, so we wanted to kind of run through that. And I know most people here, if not everyone, is working on their muscle ups right now. And so then hopefully we can just talk through some stuff that's gonna help us all to get a little bit better with it. So, I mean, Theo, if you had to sort of start at the very basics in terms of the mechanics of the muscle up, how would you describe it?
So first, I would say, to me, the most important thing to work is the height. Like you said, some guys are strong at pull-ups, but they're not very strong at muscle-up because they just work, this range of motion. But a muscle-up, you gotta pull high. So the higher you pull for a pull-up, the better is gonna be your muscle-up. So I would first work on this height of the pull-up, pulling very high and fast, explosive. So this is gonna be the first part, and then the second part is gonna be the trajectory. The swing you take and the way you circle the bar, the technique is gonna be very important. But the higher you pull, the less important the technique is when it comes to body weight muscle up. Then when it comes to pulling heavy between your legs, then every little detail is gonna matter.
Yeah, I'd say so because with body weight, we can definitely finesse the actual form that's needed, just because you're always going to be able to pull higher with your body weight than you can with weight on it. And then as the weight increases, one thing you'll notice too, like if you're doing chin-ups or you're doing pull-ups, as you increase weight, your ability to get your chin further over the bar is less and less, right? So then the idea now is we want to work on being able to pull as high as we possibly can, so that as the weight increases, we have like a window of, call it like a factor of safety almost, in a sense, where it's like, okay, I know that I can pull XYZ much higher, so then as the weight increases, my pull's gonna be less, but it's still sufficient to be able to get over the bar, right? And so then, yeah, that's one of those things that's actually pretty important in that respect. And I think I like to really break down the muscle up in terms of some of the details that actually precede the pull itself. One of the things that we want to start by talking about really is the setup for the muscle up, right? And so a lot of people have really crappy muscle up setups in terms of like the box and everything that they're working with, or no box at all. Sometimes people will just jump onto the bar and start trying to pull from there. And that is the easiest way to be able to have a terrible muscle up, right? And so then this is kind of the way that I like to think about it. So I'll start with a box or a platform that's going to allow me to, one, I need to be able to reach up to the bar and get into an overgrip, right? And so then essentially a lot of people will do pull-ups where, think about your knuckles facing up into, essentially up into the air. So then I have a small amount of the surface area of my actual hand on the bar when I'm doing pull-ups like this, right? And so my grip, when I'm doing this, is not as strong as it could be. What we can do is increase that surface area by now getting more of our hand on here. That's going to be called an overgrip, right? So overgrip is probably one of the most important things when it comes to muscle up. As well as your pull up, it's going to help to shorten the range of motion for the pull, and it results in a stronger pull with more control as well. And so then your box now needs to be high enough to allow you to get into that overgrip. I prefer to have a box such that I get onto my toes when I'm getting into that overgrip, because what now happens is that I can create more tension in my entire body. So if this box is like twice as high and my arms are bent and everything like that, we have to think about the fact that we need to have our arms entirely locked out when we're initiating the muscle up, right? And so then the problem would be is now my body's gonna go into more and more of a pike the higher that box is. So then if I can have my box about right here, I'm looking good. So now I can sort of get onto my toes, get into that overgrip, and then make sure that my arms are locked out from here. From there, the next thing that I'm thinking about is the speed at which now I'm dismounting from the box, and that's going to be in a series of 2 steps. So then I like to start with my, set my overgrip, get my toes up, and then I'll take 1 step off, right? I'll start now by sort of leaning down my weight onto my hands, as well as getting a little bit lower on this box. And then from there, I will release my second foot to start the swing. And the goal here is that we want to have as minimal swing as possible in order to keep ourselves as vertical as possible, so that our pull is not going horizontally, but as vertically as possible, right? So the more horizontal that we pull is the further away that we get from the bar. But then the thing is, if we have a smaller swing, then it keeps me very vertical when I'm about to initiate the pull. So then from there, we have our setup in the sense that we figure out exactly the height that we want for our box ideally. We know the way that we want to be able to step off of the box such that we can minimize the actual swing that we have. And then from there now, our next step is going to be initiating that pull. The next thing there, I don't know what Theo likes to do, but I prefer to keep my eyes directly on the bar the entire time. This is like one of my life hacks for the muscle up, in the sense that my shoulders are going to follow the direction that my head is going. So if my eyes are constantly tracking the bar, as I get above the bar and I start to look down at the bar when I'm getting into that transition phase, my shoulders are gonna follow and curl over. And so then in order now to balance my body out, I'm going to have less pike of my hips, or my feet are not going to go as far forward, the more weight that I can shift forward of the bar. So then if we're far away from the bar when we're transitioning, our body's gonna try to balance by shooting our feet out now. So as we're trying to get over the bar, you're gonna see that huge pike in the hips, versus we keep that vertical trajectory as we were talking about, and then getting that weight curled over as quickly as we possibly can. So keep our eyes on the bar from there, and then we'll be in good shape. Yes. What else do you want to toss in there?
Yeah, talking about the swing, I would say when it comes to body weight muscle ups, you want to have like a so-called big swing, because you have this initial speed and it's going to help you pull potentially higher. But when you do heavy muscle up, the more swing you have, the more initial speed you have, and the less control you have over the trajectory, and the more complicated the transition is going to be. And so there's a French athlete, Flo Marek. He's very, very good at endurance. He does a lot of set and reps. But when it comes to weighted muscle up, he's not very good because he has a big swing. And so he struggles to do the transition correctly. And recently, he changed a little bit the muscle up. He's taking less swing, and you can see his muscle up is way better. So it's exactly what you say. You want to be more vertical instead of being horizontal. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And looking at the bar when you do the muscle up is better because you want to look where you're headed. So you want to go up, you look up. As easy as it gets. Same for the squats, on the way up, you want to look kind of up in order to push up.
It helps to keep your upper bodies essentially more upright as well. Helps with your spine too, because if you're looking down, then you're bending your upper spine.
Exactly.
I would say too, when it comes to chin-ups and pull-ups as well, if you're keeping your eye on the bar, you're going to have an easier time remaining in that retracted state that we want. That's like one of those things that I find as well. A lot of people will go into protraction as they get up to the top of like the pull-up or the chin-up. It's like if you're keeping your eyes on it the entire time, it's a lot easier to be able to maintain that shoulder position. So then, I guess the next thing is, Theo, why don't you demonstrate a muscle up, and then we can go back and work on the progressions from there.
So as you said, you want to have a strong grip because everything starts from the grip. I like to do a double swing, or called dead stop. It gives me time to really focus on, being stable. And then you just pull.
Bro's got some power. And so one thing that you may have noticed too about the form that Theo is using there is he's very vertical in his muscle up. And that's something that is going to work very well when you are doing bodyweight muscle ups, just because our strength to weight ratio is going to be pretty high. as we
Exactly.
increase the weight that we have strapped to us, it's going to be a lot harder for you to be able to get a super vertical muscle up. And so then that's where the whole curling yourself over the bar comes into play, because when it comes to like a 1 rep max sport such as street lifting, our goal is to limit our range of motion for the exercise or the movement that we're competing in as much as possible and still have a valid rep, which means that I want to have as low as a pull as possible, which means that I need the least amount of power and then just get myself right over the bar at that point in time, right? And so then we can always do that super vertical muscle up with no weight on us, but then we want to just work towards getting just a whole lot more curled over the bar as we continue forward with that. And so I think the next thing that we should probably talk about now is the progressions in terms of like the levels that we would go through when it comes to the muscle up itself. I like to say, to be honest, that level 1 is kind of like 10 pull-ups, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd say like if you have 10 pull-ups, then like you are well and ready to move away from level 1. And so when it comes to probably some tips with those pull-ups, make sure that you have a solid overgrip. So anytime that you're doing pull-ups, even chin-ups to be honest, get as much of your hands on that bar as you possibly can, because that again is going to decrease the range of motion. It's going to allow you to get a little bit more activation in that movement itself. I'd say for me, I like to say level 2 is like chest to bar pull-up. That's usually what I'll say.
Very important.
And I can demonstrate that as well too.
Yeah.
So then for chest to bar, and then this is one of the things too with my athletes that I will assign in terms of like one of the regressions of muscle ups that we'll work on. Again, I like to make sure that we have a solid overgrip on that bar, and then our goal is, as I was mentioning, we want to keep the eyes on the bar. Our goal is to make contact with our chest as hard on this bar as possible, right? Because this is a movement that's all about speed. And so we want to be able to knock into the bar, and then we're remaining in retraction that entire time. So as I'm looking up, my goal is to now pull my elbows down in towards my rib cage, and then once I'm doing that, I'm keeping a big chest and we're coming in contact with the bar. I think it would be cool to kind of just get everyone up on the bar right now. Let's do some chest to bar reps. So like I guess everyone just like go for a double, and then we'll look at form and kind of move from there.
Fast and high.
All right, let's see that grip set. There we go. Good. Good.
Yep.
Very nice. Let's see it, Nick. Yes, sir.
All right.
Good work. There we
Easy.
go. Very nice looking grip as well. Settles. Boom. Yes, sir. Awesome.
All right.
Sick. Let the body settle. There we go. Good effort. We got the effort.
It's good.
We'll work on it. We'll work on it. And so one of the things too that we'll do as well is a regression for that chest to bar will be using a resistance band as assistance, so that we can work on that speed, right? Because with that, it's not so much the strength that we care about at this point in time, but the speed, because once we initiate with good speed, we're gonna have a more successful muscle up. So that, I would say, what is that? That's level 1 is 10 pull-ups, level 2 chest to bar, level 3 is gonna be upper abdominal to bar from there. So then
I call it high pull-up.
Yep,
so
high
it's
pull.
basically like chest pull-up, but you try to pull even higher.
Yes, sir. All right, let's do it.
So, in my opinion, you want to take about the same swing as a muscle up. As if you go for a muscle up, you just go for a pull up, a high pull up.
Yep.
So you can do a double swing.
Nice. And then notice how small of a swing that he has right now. That's what we want, right? Because the more swing that we have is going to be the more horizontal our pull is.
Exactly.
And so what I'll say is right now Theo's literally pulling to his waist, which is like absurd in the sense that like you need a lot of power to be able to do that. I would just like to have everyone who's doing this for training, if you can make it to about like the middle of your abs, then you're in good shape from there, right? And so then again, we're looking for as small as a swing as we can. Go here.
Exactly.
And then we're good to go. Boom. Just like that. And yeah, all right, let's get the...
Think about using your abs as well. The muscle up is actually a good abs exercise. When you pull, you really want to like use the abs to really pull higher. You use some core strength, especially when it comes to weight in muscle
Also
up.
make sure
Yeah.
squeezing your feet together.
Yeah.
A lot of people will neglect the activation that you need in your lower body.
Yeah.
Your quads should be fully flexed, right?
Exactly.
So that we're keeping tension. I think one of the ways I've heard it described like a long time ago in terms of activating your legs during upper body movements is you're plugging the energy gaps. So imagine like you're exerting a lot of force from your body, right? You don't want some of that force and that energy to leak out into your legs because your legs aren't doing anything. If your legs are tight and compressed, we're making sure there are no energy leaks and we can use it efficiently, essentially, from there, right? All right, who's next? Small swing. There we go.
All right.
Ooh. All right, that's good. So I like to, so then you got either dorsiflexion, which is going to be pointing your toes upwards. That's going to help to keep you from bending your knees. Exactly. So I like to do that when I have weight in between my feet.
Yeah.
You can also point your toes down as well. So some other people will do that. So you can try either of those and see kind of what works best for you. I prefer not to have neutral feet though, because then that's just kind of another way. Usually, yeah, exactly. It's just you kind of allowing energy leaks. So who's ready to go next? We're just going to be facing this way now instead, so that we don't have any chance of running into the back of that thing. Boom. Yes, sir.
All right.
Good looking rep. Beautiful looking rep. Let's go. Very nice.
Good.
There we go. All day.
All right.
Usually I'll have my athletes do this movement with a resistance band to be able to build up that motor pattern while we're developing strength. From here, we essentially will load up our upper ab pull-up as much as we can, and then essentially the only difference now between an upper abdominal pull-up and a muscle-up is literally just now that transfer of weight over, right? And so essentially we're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing, and then we are just now curling our shoulders over the bar. I mean, that's really it. So then, full rep, tiny swing. There we go. All right, muscle up time. If anyone needs a band to do it, perfect.
I need a band.
If anyone needs a band, that's totally okay. 100%, man. There we go.
All right.
Good. So the feedback that I would give you on that is the muscle up itself was fairly vertical. And so then again, as much as you can kind of scrunch in, curl yourself over, it's going to be even easier.
And try to rotate the wrist when you go
Yes.
up the bar.
I wasn't even looking forward to that, but that's one of those things that you definitely have to work on. Make sure that you allow your wrist to turn over that bar. How? How would you explain it?
You wanna, when you pull, you wanna rotate at the same time that you go. Yeah, exactly. And once you both elbows are rotated, then you just have to push. Yeah. But you gotta push like that. I mean, it's hard to explain, but.
I want to give that another try.
I was gonna say it is fairly difficult to explain because it's one of those things that kind of happens naturally almost.
Exactly.
You know.
So you really wanna go over the bar, and like that.
Okay.
And then you push.
Yeah, that helps out.
Yeah.
So we were talking about though the actual transfer of the wrist transfer, because it's one of those things that I don't know that we think about it that much, you know?
Yeah.
Like I've always just done it that way. Like I've always felt it like here, like after. I don't think about it, but I think I slightly loosen like.
Yep, exactly. So you kind of just allow it to slide a little bit as you're transferring over the bar.
I tried the way you do it. Yeah.
There we go. That was better. You got the transfer that time.
Yep.
Just let it loosen up then.
Yeah, you have to let it loosen up because otherwise it's going to work against you. That's the thing. Yeah. Good.
About align with the shoulders. Yeah.
See it.
Shoulder length.
Oh!
You had it. Now the next step is using weight.
Next step is weight.
If you try to do like no swing muscle up, it's a movement I love to do. When you do no swing muscle body weight, it's very hard because you don't have, the trajectory. If you stay here,
Sheesh.
it's hard because the trajectory, you know, you got to find this balance.
Yeah, you got to get your feet out in front of you to balance
Exactly,
yourself.
but when you have the weight, you can actually use the weight to go over the bar
Very
easier.
true.
So
Because the thing about it, yeah, the weight has inertia, and so then you get to use that inertia to your
you
advantage.
really want to use the weight, yeah.
I saw people at the comp putting the weight like literally like right between their kneecaps, which was crazy to me. But like I gave it a try. Honestly, I thought it was like a lot better. So like when you upgrade in weight, like how do you like to like if you're using like a 45 pounder, like where do you want to put that? That's a little
We can talk through it, because for me, I prefer to have the weight down at my feet, because I want to use my feet to control that weight. The weight itself has inertia, so it's going to resist the motion that you're doing, right? So then now, think about the fact that you swing forward, that the inertia of the weight is still moving forward when you start the pull. So then again, we want to make sure then that we limit that swing, because otherwise it's going to be pulling you as you're initiating that rep. And then we're pushing forward on the weight with our toes so that we can get our body balanced over the bar. So I guess, are there any bumper plates here that we can use? Let's quickly talk through weighted reps. So once you have sufficient, body weight reps, obviously for competition, we're going to have to add weight to the reps. And so there are two different forms that we can use in terms of weight placement. What I like to do, first and foremost, is I like to have the weight by my feet, because that allows me to manipulate the weight. So even if I have the weight between my feet or in front of me, they're gonna be down at my feet. And the thing is, the higher the weight up, the higher up on your body the weight is, it does change the physics essentially. So then you actually have the most amount of a pendulum effect with the weight down at your feet, but we can control that by just limiting our swing, right? So I'll start with one of the forms that tends to be most common, which would just be weight in between your feet. And so I'm gonna just use the first loop on my belt, because I like to have this thing pretty low. And so here, now I'm able to use the inside of my feet to just grab onto this weight like that, right? And so unfortunately we gotta do it this way, but from here, I'll let the weight slide off of the platform just a little bit, and then I'm guiding it with one foot that I step down with. The other foot's gonna have to clamp it as soon as I dismount from the actual bar itself. And so I'll get my grip, as I was saying, I'll lean in, get this one foot to guide it, and we'll make our swing. And so what I'm doing is, as I initiate the swing, I'm now pushing forward with this weight to be able to balance my body. So as I make the pull, my body is coming slightly this way. In order to balance myself, I'm pushing that weight forward with my feet, right?
See it as a leg extension.
Exactly.
Leg
It's
extension,
essentially leg
but you
extension.
keep your legs straight.
And so then it's funny, because with a weighted rep, we can technically kip a tiny bit more and get away with it, because this is resisting your body. So you can apply more force to the weight, and your legs are technically not going anywhere, because you're just resisting the weight itself, right?
But you want to squeeze the quads and keep the legs straight.
Exactly. The last thing that I'll demo is having the weight in front of my feet. And between the two forms, I would say that I tend to feel like I have more control of the weight itself when the weight is in front of my feet. So I'll start here, and then I like to just twist this a couple times. And then it's going to rest in front of my feet like so. The only difference now is that my feet are going to be directly pushing on the weight from the very point that I actually dismount from the box. And with that, now I don't have to think about gripping the weight with my feet as I did when I was dismounting. So in my opinion, there's a little bit more control that you'll have over the weight in the very beginning of the rep when you have the weight in front of your feet. However, I find that it's a little bit harder to control the weight in the middle of the rep when it's like this, because you're not directly grasping the weight itself. So I'll do a rep here just to demo it, and then we'll go from there. So there we go. That wasn't too bad, but yeah, I've been sticking with weight in between of recent, just because I want to get better at that. I feel like I'll be more successful with it. It just takes a little bit of time to kind of learn.
See how I'm going to use the weight. I'm going to exaggerate it, of course. And the way the weight is going to move is going to show you how I use the weight. So you really want to have the weight kind of do your leg extension. And so as you said, Link, well, he's here. Either you have your weight between the legs, but for me it's harder to use better the weight because you gotta think of squeezing the weight. Whereas when the weight is just in front of the legs, you just have to push forward. Exactly, and that's it. And then you can use the weight as a counterbalance and go higher. Yeah. Who wants to try? All right. You had it. It's just the transition. Rotate your wrists.
Spinal flexion too.
Yeah. You want to pull closer to the bar. Like you're here. You want to be here. All right.
Boom. There we go.
It's very easy. Perfect trajectory.
Any last comments on this? Any last comments for the muscle ups?
Practice makes perfect. So you gotta do it again, and again.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, in a smart way, of course, you don't want to overtrain. But the more you practice, the more you understand the technique, the more you're like explosive, the better the muscle is gonna get.
Yeah. And then use the resistance band as much as possible, just to help to lessen the actual load that you're pulling. And it makes sure that you're able to actually get the reps and practice and learn the motor pattern. You're good to go from there.
And it's going to take time. Like, don't try to go too fast.
For sure.
Take some time to go over, step by step.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm good at muscle-ups today, but I've been doing muscle-ups for a long time.
Exactly.
So can't be built overnight, right? You got to really trust the process, and you all get there.
Yeah, that's a wrap.
And that's
all right,
it.
let's get on with the rest of the workout. Let's go.
All right.